And we are back, as Joe would say. But no Joe this week. He's travelling back from America, so he's left me flying solo for this UFC Louisville main card preview and picks as middleweights collide. Cannonier against Imavov, number 4 against number 7 in the 185-pound division. A potential title eliminator? Probably not. To whatever happens after Dricus du Plessis fights Israel Adesanya. We will see if one of these guys can make a big statement. But we've got a 6-fight main card for this one. And, a few interesting matchups, a few fighters returning from quite long absentees, a few losing streaks in there, so quite a tricky one to predict. So thanks, Joe, for that. We'll kick it off with Miguel Baeza against Punahele Soriano on the main card. 31 years old, Miguel Baeza. Let's run through his prospects for this fight. He's 3-3 in the UFC, 10-3 as a pro. He's had 2 years off through injury and illness. Nothing major, just a few little niggles that he's gone through over the past couple of years that has kept him from competing. Although he has competed this year in a grappling match at the start of 2024. So he has blown off the cobwebs, so to speak. Got a submission win in that encounter in Fury. So Baeza coming back to competition, now ready to compete in the UFC, where he was last seen in April 2022. He was on a 3-fight losing skid at that point. His last fight, he lost a round 1 KO defeat to Andre Filau, part of that 3-fight skid. He also lost to Chaos Williams, where he was stopped by punches in round 3, and a decision to Santiago Ponzinibbio as well. But he was on a 3-fight streak, winning streak before that. He got a round 2 sub of Takeshi Sako, a left hook finish of Matt Brown, of course recently retired, the legend of Matt Brown, and a round 2 ground and pound finish of Hector Aldana as well. So he's had 3 wins in the UFC, all have been second round finishes, and 3 defeats as well. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage here. He has good busy output. Does take some damage at Baeza, but he comes up against Soriano, who's 31 years old. He's 3-4 in the UFC, 9-4 as a pro. Making his debut here at welterweight. Campaigned mostly as a middleweight throughout his career. His pro debut, actually, though, was at heavyweight. But says in the media day this week that he is a small middleweight, hence finally making this move down to welterweight and actually cutting some weight. He walks around naturally around the 190 mark, he was saying, so doesn't have to cut much to make middleweight. So now making that drop to make welterweight. On a 2-fight losing streak, he's lost 4 of his last 5 as well. He's lost his last 2 to Dustin Stoltzfus, who's also on this card. That was in December, 2nd round rear naked choke, and to Roman Kopylov as well. Round 2 finish there for Kopylov via punches. Last win in the UFC for Soriano was in 2022, where he beat Doucher Lungimbula, round 2 uppercut. Stopped Dusko Todorovic as well before that. So does have some finishes for himself in the UFC. Soriano also beat Oscar Pachicosa as well. That was a round 1 finish too. But I suppose the question for Soriano is, does he carry this weight down to 170? Does he make it well enough to give himself a boost in his UFC career? Does need a win here, you would say, to potentially avoid being cut, maybe. Miguel Baeza too, obviously had this layoff, now back. Can he reignite his career? I'm going to go with Baeza to get this one done. I think he's got the busier output of the two, and I think he's just got that bit more skill. If he can come back, all these injury niggles are sorted, and he's obviously competed already this year in the grappling match. So I think Baeza looking like he might be coming back a bit fresher to this, and Soriano making a last-ditch attempt, dropping in weight to try and get some momentum in his UFC career. Next up, we've got Julian Marquez against Zach Reese. Marquez, 34 years old, 3-3 in the UFC, 9-4 as a pro. He's on a 2-fight skid himself. He's only fought twice actually since 2021, and he's lost both of those to Marc-Andre Barrios, round 2, standing TKO and punches in that one, and to Gregory Robocop Rodriguez as well. Round 1 punches in that one, the defeat he took, and he took a lot of damage in both of those fights as well. So Marquez, he's a wild boy. He's always fun to watch. This will be a fun fight to watch, but it's whether he can withstand what Zach Reese has got. Marquez's wins are over Sam Alvey, Mikey Pitolo, and Darren Stewart. The first two there, Alvey and Pitolo, 2021 his last wins, and Darren Stewart, that third win was back in 2017. So Marquez not been the most active of fighters. All submission wins, those as well, for someone who's quite wild on the feet, and in his last two hasn't really tried to make any takedowns. This one could be interesting for Zach Reese, who is 30 years old. He's 0-1 in the UFC, made his debut last time out. 6-1 as a pro, though. Lost in his debut to Cody Brundage. That was a slam knockout. Brundage, very similar to the Drakkar Klose one we saw quite recently. That one, outside of the UFC, does have that perfect record on the regional scene. 6 fights, including one on the Contender Series as well. A submission win there by first round finish. 2 submissions and 4 KOs and TKOs make up his record outside of the UFC. He is a tall fighter though, Reese, very big for the division, so I quite like him here. He reminds me a little bit of Rodriguez, who knocked out Marquez, that he stands nice and tall. He's very good up close when he gets into the clinch. So I'm going to side with Reese here to get off to get his UFC career back in the win column, get that first win under his belt. He does look like Logan Paul a little bit as well, but we won't hold that against him. Reese to get the victory by TKO. Marquez just too wild in his recent fights. So I'm going to give Reese the shot here. Another wild man, Bruno Ferreira, is up next against Dustin Stoltzfus. Ferreira, 2-1 in the UFC. He's 31 years old. He's 11-1 as a pro. He has 2 round 1 finishes over Phil Halls last time out as a flying knee to punches, and to Gregory Rodriguez as well. Knocked him out with a counter left in the first round. In between that, he lost to Nursultan Ruziboev. That was a round 1 finish for Ruziboev. Counter right to ground and pound. Obviously, we saw Ruziboev drop weight down to welterweight to face Joaquin Buckley recently. Didn't look the same. Buckley dominated that fight, really. Ruziboev never got going, whether it was the weight cut or not, but didn't look how he'd looked in his first couple of encounters, but was stepping up in decent class against Buckley, who's in good form, especially since he's dropped down to welterweight. Interestingly, Ferreira has only ever seen round 2 once in his career, in all his pro fights. So in 12 pro fights, only ever seen round 2 once, and that stoppage that he got there was 12 seconds into the second round. So he's barely been beyond the first round in his career. So can Stoltzfus maybe take this deeper and test Ferreira's stamina? Stoltzfus, 32 years old. He's 2-4 in the UFC. Has a losing record. 15-5 though as a pro. He subbed Soriano, who we mentioned in the opener on this main card last time out, which prompted that move down in weight for Soriano. That was in December. A second round rear naked choke. He's lost to Abus Magomed as well as that was a round 1 finish for Magomedov, and to Gerald Meerschaert as well. Round 3 rear naked choke in that one. He does have a win over Joe Pyfer on the Contender Series, Stoltzfus, when Pyfer dislocated his arm in a takedown attempt for Stoltzfus. He landed funny, didn't he, Joe Pyfer, and really badly dislocated his arm. But in terms of a pick, I'm going to go for Ferreira. He's got a good takedown defense. I'm not sure Stoltzfus has got enough to spoil him here, and he's shown himself to be a ferocious finisher in his fights. Can be finished as well, as we've seen by the Rusev Boev loss. But I think Ferreira's going to come out and get the job done here. So that'd be my Ferreira TKO KO round 1 for Brunno Ferreira. Moving on to Raul Rosas Jr. against Ricky Turcios. Obviously, a lot of hype around Rosas Jr. 19 years old, still a baby, still learning on the job. Loads of hype coming off the Contender Series. Obviously, he's 2-1 in the UFC, 8-1 as a pro for the 19-year-old. 2 first-round wins in the UFC Octagon, though. Jay Perrin, rear naked choke on his debut. That was in 2022. And last time out against Terence Mitchell, made short work of him getting the sub in just 54 seconds. Lost his second fight in the Octagon, though, to Christian Rodriguez by unanimous decision. Derailed a little bit of that hype and just showed the vulnerabilities of Rosas Jr. On that night. This fight was supposed to happen back in February on the Mexico card, but Rosas Jr. pulled out with an illness. Turcios, though, 31 years old, 2-1 in the UFC, 12-3 as a pro. He's a former tough winner. His last fight, though, in 2022. So another fight that's been inactive on this card. Decision wins over Kevin Navidad, a split decision, and Brady Heistand as well. That was in 2021. He lost to Amin Zahabi as well by unanimous decision in 2022. That makes up his UFC resume with 2 wins and 1 defeat. In terms of the verdict, can't see Turcios being able to handle Rosas Jr. Not after the time off and the inactivity. Rosas Jr. too strong, too fresh, too skillful, and I'm going to go Rosas Jr. to get it done. Round 1 submission. Dominick Reyes against Dustin Jacoby is the co-main event. Well, what can you say about Dominick Reyes? 34 years old, looking about 54. When you see him at Media Day this week, he's had a right old fall from grace. 6-4 in the UFC, 12-4 as a pro. He's on a 4-fight losing streak, now ranked number 15 in the division. So an opportunity for Dustin Jacoby to break into the top 15 of the UFC at 36 years old. He's had bad luck inside the octagon, Reyes, but also bad luck outside of it as well. Injuries, illnesses all surrounding this current streak, and he hasn't looked the same fighter since that fight against John Jones, where he should have had his hand raised in that title fight, and his career's fallen apart since, and at certain points his health as well, by the sounds of it. So he struggled to get any kind of momentum back. Lost to Jan Blachowicz off the back of the John Jones fight, was knocked out in the second round. Came back, fought Yuri Prochazka, was absolutely battered in that fight. Reyes stopped him round 2, and he lost last time out to Ryan Spann with a power jab as well. Knockout for Spann. So Reyes has just fallen off a cliff in terms of his form recently, and it's hard to kind of, I think, get that vibe of where fighters are at. Are they just falling off the cliff? Is this losing streak going to continue? Have they managed to sort any problems away from the octagon with the injuries and things like that, and the illnesses that might have been underlying in some of these losses for Reyes? And watching his Media Day interview, it's even harder because he just seems quite forlorn for me when you watch him. He's kind of not committing to anything. There's no confidence that he's going to come out. I know he's on this losing streak, so he can't come out and be as brash as he was early on in his UFC career. But I'm just not getting the vibe from Reyes that he's in a good place, open to be proven wrong. But this could be a nice opportunity for Dustin Jacoby, who himself has not been in the best of form. So I think that's where we've got to rack up with Reyes. Right, he lost to Spann last time out, but losing to Prochazka and Blachowicz off the back of losing to John Jones, they're names where in the UFC, you maybe wouldn't expect Dominick Reyes to come out on top, but I think it's the manner of the defeats which is the concern. In the jab loss to Span, the battering by Prochazka, that you've really got to be concerned that can he not only physically come back from what he's been through, but mentally come back as well. And for Dustin Jacoby, he seems in a good place. He's 36-year-old. His record in the UFC, not great, 7-5-1, 19-8-1 as a pro. He's lost 3 of his last 4, though. Lost to Alonzo Manyfield by decision last time out in December. Asmat Mirzakhanov as well last April, a unanimous decision defeat. And to Khalil Roundtree Jr., a split decision defeat as well. His last 2 wins that he's managed to get inside the octagon have both been first-round finishes, but 7 of his UFC fights have gone over the distance. 3 wins and 4 losses have gone to the judges' scorecards for Jacoby. So interesting. Jacoby, for me, just seems to have a bit more confidence about him. Reyes, I hope he comes back, and I think he can still do a job in the UFC. It'd be nice to see him regain some form, but it's hard to pick him, isn't it? Just off the back of this losing run. And as I said, watching the media day, I just don't get the vibe that he is there yet. Whether he can come out and get a good performance, maybe go the distance with Jacoby and then build from there, I don't know. Maybe he can grind out the winner for Jacoby and make things ugly. But I'm going to side with Jacoby. I think this might go to decision. But I'm going to go with Dustin Jacoby. But I would like to see Reyes win and get back in the win column and try and build some momentum back, because there's some interesting fights for him at light heavyweight if he can get back in that mix, but in danger now of falling out of the top 15. And the main event is number 4 ranked Jared Cannonier against number 7 ranked Nassourdine Imavov. Cannonier, 40 years old now, Cannonier. I'm 40 in a few months, and that lad looks good for 40. He's 10-6 in the UFC, 17-6 as a pro. As we said, he's ranked number 4 at middleweight. Won his last 2, absolutely battered Marvin Vettori last time out. Unanimous decision win. Set a record for significant strikes in the octagon during that fight. Beat Sean Strickland as well by split decision. That one could have gone either way. And before that, lost to Israel Adesanya in his title opportunity, Cannonier. So he took a bit of stick, I think, for the Adesanya fight and then the Strickland fight. But obviously he's come out against Vettori and have been a bit more offensive and really gone for the fight. And I think that's maybe where he gets his opportunity here against Imavov. Over the 5 rounds. Imavov, 12 years his junior, 28 years old. He's 5-2 with 1 no contest in the UFC. As a pro, 13-4 with that no contest. Number 7 in the middleweight division. A majority decision win over Roman Dolidze last time out in February. So he's been active this year, wants to climb back up the rankings and get near that title shot again. Imavov had a clash of heads with Chris Curtis last June, which again derailed him. That he's not been able to get that momentum back following the loss to Sean Strickland earlier in that year. Strickland took that fight on 7 days' notice and schooled Imavov really. So he's had a real stop-start to his UFC career. Wins over Joaquin Buckley, but the middleweight Buckley, that went to decision. Edmund Shabazian, who's on a bad losing streak of his own, a round 2 finish, and he beat Ian Heinisch as well in round 2, stopping him in that fight too with his wins before that Sean Strickland fight. So Imavov, he's one of those new contenders who, again, not in the same degree as Rosas Jr., but still at 28, learning on the job, taking his losses, coming back. But can he get this win of Jared Cannonier? Cannonier probably gave a career best performance last time out. He does look good. He is a bit more on the offensive. If he can put that back into play like he did against Marvin Vettori, I think he might just have too much for Imavov, who tends to slow down later in fights. Cannonier tends to grow into fights a little bit. So I'm going to edge towards Cannonier on this one. But I won't be surprised if Imavov can get it done. But I think Cannonier, just with his output and setting that record last time out against Vittori, I think he's going to come and try and be impressive again, get a knockout finish, and put himself right in the mix for a potential title shot in future. Should we hopefully get that Duplessis against Adesanya fight later in the summer or in the fall, that then someone like Cannonier could potentially fight the winner, particularly if Duplessis comes out on top and he's still fighting new blood. So we'll see, but there we go. That's the predictions for this UFC Fight Night Louisville. Great to be in front of crowds once again. This one out of the Apex. And, well, make sure you like and subscribe to the video and the channel as well. Proper Sport MMA will be back, hopefully with Joe again next week. And, of course, only a couple of weeks to UFC 303. Still waiting to find out whether we'll see Conor McGregor making his return against Michael Chandler in that fight. Until next time, see you later.